Hello, everybody. This is Nikki from Motherhood Unfiltered is going to be okay. And today's guest is Lisa Yara. She's a menstrual health specialist and soul based coach supporting women. And I'm so excited to have her on today. She is using a non medical holistic approach for women to get back in touch with their own bodies and paying attention using the moon and to keep track of our cycles. That way we are prepared whenever it's that time of the month. So before we get started, I do want to remind everyone to, if you're watching this on YouTube, to give us a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. If you've already subscribed, thank you very much. And please share this with someone you think, could use this information. Also, if you're listening on a podcast, please go to and Apple Podcast and rate and review us there. Um, if when you anytime you rate the podcast, it just lets us know how good we're doing and if how we can do better. So I would really appreciate that. So I'm so excited to talk to Lisa. She's such has a wonderful smile and so caring. And so here she is. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for having me here.
So, Lisa, first of all, tell us where you're from, and then tell us how you got started as a menstrual health specialist. I'm really curious about how this, got going for you.
Yeah, I am living and from Germany, in the west of Germany, in a small town. And yeah, it actually it probably started very early, but like the real start was 2017 when I had a major mental health crisis,
Mhm.
and even went into a clinic because I couldn't go on with life as it was anymore. Like I struggled with anorexia and OCD, and life was just day after day a complete struggle, and it didn't make any sense to me that this would be going on for another 40 years or so. So I said, no,
Yeah.
something needs to change now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was in that clinic that I kind of found my calling, because
Mhm.
suddenly all the pressure was lifted off. Like I didn't have to cook, I didn't have to buy groceries, I didn't have to care about any of that. I could
Yeah.
just concentrate on myself. I could learn how to process my emotions, because
Mhm.
ultimately both anorexia and OCD, and I believe a lot of other mental conditions, help us keep the emotions down, because
Yes.
they don't feel safe in the body, and or they are
Mhm.
not welcome, and they hurt.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so basically in that time I learned how to get back in touch with it, and amidst all of that, which was a journey in and of itself, I also found that uh, it was so joyful for me to just talk to the other patients in the clinic in the
Mhm.
afternoon. So you would always find me with someone or someone else, and just having lots of conversations, even holding them through their own stuff. And in the end, they all called me a co-therapist. Because I don't know why. I mean, I wasn't trained in that at all, but something in my presence must have made them
Right.
feel assured and, yeah,
Well,
feel better.
you're easy to talk to. I can totally see why people would want to open up to you and have you listen to their woes and boohoo's, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah. So you're
Yeah, and that was about the time where I discovered a book called Goddess Wisdom, by Tanishka the Moon Woman, and she spoke about the cycles and how our menstrual cycle and everything that it encompasses is so overlooked and underrated in our society. And the
Yes.
moment I read that, I knew that was the truth. I could feel it in my bones. And
Right.
so I began to get into all these aspects of following the moon cycle, and then becoming more curious about my own body and what it was doing.
Right.
Because with anorexia, and I mean, I think many, especially women or people socialized as women, can relate that our body image gets so distorted by everything that we see out there and what we should or shouldn't look like and all the treatments we should have. um,
Right.
yeah, so to me, coming back to my body and discovering my own cycles was like
Mhm.
the game changer, and ultimately helped me make peace with my body and befriend
Mhm.
my body and start a relationship with my body and
Mhm.
see its wisdom. And
Right.
yeah, and not just my body, because our menstrual health touches actually all aspects of our life. So the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And so the conclusion was I wanted to let other women and menstruators know about this beautiful cycle that we all have, that is a gift, but we haven't learned that it is a
Yeah.
gift.
I love that. I really love that. I wish it just sounds so when you I hear you say it, it sounds like something as from the beginning of time, and why haven't we figured this out before now, you know? And so I really love that you have discovered that and from, reading that book. And my question is, so what was the so when you started following your cycles and paying attention to them and figuring out, when something was going to happen, what was the first thing that you were like, "Oh my lord, I wish I had done this a long time ago," Um, I'm thinking like maybe were you calmer? Did your family like say, "Yay, Lisa," So
Yes,
what was
so
like
in
what the very first, thing that you realized was such a positive thing?
definitely the overall sense of ease and compassion for myself and for my body. I think like that
Yeah.
was what I referred to as the game changer, is like, oh, my body is moving in cycles. And yes, now I am in my premenstrual phase and I feel totally bloated and like 100
Yeah.
kilos more than normal. But I know that next week I will feel completely my old self again. And
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. That's why I love the name of your podcast so
I
much.
know.
It's my personal mantra. It's okay.
Yeah. I know. I mean, yeah, you might feel like you're going through a storm at the moment, but trust me, it's you're not gonna stay there forever. You're gonna come out of it. And I could just imagine, like, in my life, me being in my premenstrual cycle, wearing a sign that says "Beware," for the next 72 hours or however long it is, and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure my family probably would have appreciated that warning, because sometimes you don't pay attention to it, and you're just going along with your life, and then all of a sudden, you're like, irritable and grouchy and,
Mm-hmm.
all the bad things are happening. So when you're in that premenstrual cycle, is there something that that you can do to help with those symptoms?
Yeah, definitely. So, what we have to understand about this premenstrual phase, it's actually a very potent and powerful one, because what's coming up is we realize what our truth is, like what we are here for and what we are up for, and
Mhm.
what we don't want to tolerate.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it all often comes in the form of like self-criticism, or when it comes up, we begin to criticize ourselves for
Mhm.
this coming up. But if we like, what I like to do when there is this big storm of emotions and thoughts coming, I just let it flow onto paper. I just write as furiously or as sadly or as whatever emotions I'm
Yeah.
feeling as it needs to be. And
Right.
at some point I see in all of this mix and mess, oh
Uh-huh.
wow, wait, that's the one thing that, like, the lesson I can take from this. in
Yeah.
this cycle. That's what I need to change in my life.
Oh, wow. I really
And
like that. Yeah. Get
yeah,
all that
because like,
nonsense out.
yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, sometimes for some people it might be better to go for a run or for a fast walk or punch
Mhm.
your pillow or whatever to just
Mhm.
get it out. But being with that emotion and allowing it to be what it
Mhm.
is so helpful. It's not
Yeah.
easy because in the society we haven't really learned how to go about difficult emotions.
No. No, we haven't, and I think, learning to deal with those, like you said when you were in the clinic, the having to work through those and process those, it feels like today people are just keeping it bottled in, and then one day they're exploding and bad things are happening. So
Yeah.
I really think that, as much as, people talk about, we need better mental health and everything, I mean, we need to do something about it. So what
Yes, and actually, if I may add that in, it's not like, as you say, it's not just mental. It's also not just emotional. It's again on all levels. Like the trauma that we carry is carried in our bodies, so we need to
Yeah.
address our bodies, and our bodies is made of different systems, like the nervous system, like the lymphatic
Yeah.
system, and we
Right.
need to really stimulate that and get that out and
Mhm.
address the emotions and
Mhm.
address the thought patterns that run the show very often.
Right. Right.
And also, we need to feel connected, like spiritually, whatever way or whatever flavor is yours,
Yeah.
but like finding this connection to the greater whole, so to
Right.
speak.
Well, that just leads me to my the next question is how does, spirituality and feminism, go together? I mean, how can we navigate those 2 different aspects?
Yeah, for me, because I identify as a feminist, but I always have to say, for me, feminism means I want to create a world where every person, every being is allowed to express themselves
Mhm.
freely as
Yeah.
they are. And
Right.
that's like the baseline. Uh,
Mhm.
and I know that feminism has a very bad reputation. I often like to
Yeah.
compare it to like the witch hunts. Feminists are the modern witches, those
Yeah.
that have a different opinion, those that are the wise women that know about herbs and all of that,
Mhm.
and they dare to question the systems
Mhm.
we live in, and so they
Mhm.
need to get burned by the system.
Yeah.
But actually, we are the ones that try to promote the truth, the like this ultimate
Right.
truth, that we are all the same. Like, yes,
Right.
it may have a different expression in you and in me, but like the basis is the same.
I love that, Lisa. I mean, that growing up, that was the world that I lived in was, yes, we are all different. We all have different beliefs, but we were always allowed to express those beliefs and either debate or don't debate, agree to disagree. And it just seems like if you today and you're not even allowed to disagree. Even if they
Mhm.
find out that for some reason you don't agree with their belief, you are the bad person. And I just love that you said that no matter how different we are, we still have that same baseline, you know, that we stand on and then we can go forward from there. So, um,
Yeah, and I want to add that, like, yes, I completely agree with that. And I mean, it's a natural reaction that
mhm,
something that's foreign and unknown is
mhm.
potentially dangerous. And so our nervous system and our brain will go, we don't want that. It's different. So it might be dangerous. So we try to reject it.
Yeah,
That's why we need this other part in us that can think logically and not go down that rabbit hole immediately, but be more open and curious and
I
go like,
know.
Oh, interesting. You're thinking that. Tell me more. Tell me why. I want to
Yeah,
like genuinely understand your viewpoint, not because I
right,
want to accept it right away, but
right.
just to explore.
Exactly, exactly. That is exactly because I mean, I'm a person, I like to ask questions, and sometimes someone will say something, and I'm like, "Wait a minute here. What did you
Mm.
say? Tell me all about this. I wanna know what's going on in your head," you know?
Hmm.
And then you can, have a positive discussion about it. Um, so how would this affect women who are, maybe in a minority group? You know, how could this help them? Or someone who doesn't get regular, health care, or, I'm just trying to think of different groups. How would this help them be able to, pay attention to their cycles and, kind of be prepared for, something that's happening in their life?
Yeah. So like what we see in society at large is that because a cycle has like the archetypal cycle has four phases.
Mhm.
If you can imagine like the four seasons, it's very similar. We have this winter time menstruation where we usually retreat back from the world, where we need more
Mhm.
rest. Then there is the spring, opening up, getting new ideas, having more
Mhm.
energy, blooming into summer where we
Mhm.
celebrate and really see, like, to communicate often, like be out and about with friends.
Mhm. Right.
Then we go into autumn where we start discerning and harvesting, but also discerning, okay, from whatever has grown, what would I like to keep and what would I like to let go of for this next cycle, and then turning back into winter. And in our society, it seems like we're always on this drive to have spring, summer, spring, summer, spring, summer. But if you look at nature, it doesn't work. The cycle is only regenerative if you go all the way and respect every of the four phases
Yeah.
equally. And that's why when in the society where we like suppress the autumn and the winter, we also
Yeah.
suppress things like crises, emotional
Yeah.
crises, and all the dark stuff, grief. I mean,
Mhm.
yes, when someone has died, you kind of understand that a person is sad for 1 or 2 days, but then please be your normal self again. It seems like that's like the expectation, which is not normal.
No. I mean, when you're reading about history, they would go have mourning periods for months, even years, and now,
Yeah.
they only let you have, 2 or 3 days off, and you're expected to go back to work and act like nothing happened? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. And like, but grief is a necessary process of letting go. That's what the trees do when they let their leaves fall. It's
yeah,
basically
yeah,
grieving.
yeah,
And yeah, and as I said, that this is needed to have a full regeneration, because if you haven't let go of the waste of the old, then you cannot be open, like fully
mhm,
open for something
mhm,
new to arise.
right,
And like that's one thing women can learn, or menstruators can learn, when they respect or pay attention to their cycle. But it's also like on a personal level, like menstruation, this time where I said you usually retreat back, or you are more inward, don't want to be outside so much. um, there is a lot of wisdom to be gained there, and we get this really deep sense of who we are on a
mhm,
deep, deep level. And that's why sometimes, for example, when I get out of that menstrual phase, I still feel a little fragile when I go back into the world.
mhm,
And just knowing about that and telling myself, oh, yeah, yeah, it's okay that I feel a little overwhelmed with what's happening right now.
mhm, right,
It makes, it's just this mini shift in perspective. We can't change the things that are happening, obviously, but we can be more compassionate with ourselves
yes, yes.
and support
We do need to
ourselves.
give ourselves some grace and be more compassionate, and to say, "Yes, it's okay to feel this," and recognize it. I think we would be much better for it if we did. Um, So, what's the most powerful question to navigate, life true to you? What is that question? Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
What's that question, Lisa?
It's the coaching question that we in soul-based coaching start every session with, and that is, what would I like to have happen? Or in that case, what would you like to have happen?
Oh, okay.
Because, like when I was there in this state with all the obsessions, like everything with the OCD becoming
Yeah.
like mandatory, having to pay attention to so many rules, I felt utterly powerless. And
Oh,
I know that even though many people don't have OCD, they know this feeling of powerlessness. And I
yes.
think it's
Yes.
the worst feeling a human being can feel,
Yes.
when you don't know what to do and you don't see any means of action. And so shifting your focus back to okay, I cannot change the circumstances A, B, C, D. But when I have this frame, like this frame within that, what would I like to have happen?
Mhm.
And then we can start finding the little bit of leeway that we actually have.
Mm.
And that brings
Yes.
us back into self agency and back into a feeling of, okay, I do have some power after all.
Right. Right.
And that's why I say, when we pay attention to our menstrual cycle, we get to know ourselves and our truth better. And then we know, okay, I'm not up for this. I won't put up with that any longer
Yeah.
because I want this other thing.
Yeah.
And I think like in the society, we often don't allow ourselves to want what we want.
Right.
So when you ask yourself that question, don't put it off immediately as a, yeah, I want that, but I can't have it. That's a story that might be a story that you tell yourself.
Yeah.
It might be that you really can't have that, but like if you don't allow yourself to speak it out, you cannot find the thing that you want that is accessible for you.
Right. Right. That is such an amazing concept. I don't know how many times someone has asked me, "Well, what what would you like to happen?" I'm like, "Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much happening. I don't know what to start with," And so then you have to go into, okay, well, what's happening? And what is the thing that you can, start working on? What is the most important thing that you want to start working on now? It just breaking it down to the itty bitty steps, being minute to the details so that you can come up with, a plan,
Mm-hmm.
to do that. But feeling powerless,
And
everyone
sometimes,
has felt that.
you don't even need this plan, because a plan is something our mind craves in order to feel control, right?
Yeah.
But like in soul-based coaching, we work a lot with metaphors, with these inner pictures that
Uh-huh.
we want. Like, I feel, maybe I'm making this up now, yeah, but I feel my heart is behind a wall, so I can't connect and have the relationships I want to. Okay, what would I like to have happen? I want my heart to burst this wall away and
Yeah.
attract the people that I really resonate with. And then we
Right.
would explore that further.
Yeah.
And then 1 week later, you ask that person, and suddenly things are starting to shift on their own
Aw.
without them even having like made a conscious plan. But
Right.
inside, they have already prepared themselves and opened
Oh, I
themselves
like
up,
that.
That's why I
So
say it's sometimes magic.
well, all about women is magic anyway, so
Yes. Yes. Hey, look at our bodies. We can create a human being from nothing.
yeah. I know we just need one little, contribution from the male
Yeah.
species. But
Yeah, we also need our eggs, but basically we create a whole
yeah, I
human being
know.
out of these two things.
I know. I mean, I love being pregnant. I don't miss it. And that actually being pregnant is like the easiest part. Raising the kids is the
Mm-hmm.
hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
So
especially in a society that expects mothers to be some certain way. And that is
yes,
like a whole other topic, the expectations
it-
today's mothers have and place on themselves as well.
right. I definitely feel like, and I don't know if I kind of feel like maybe we've done this to ourselves, added so much pressure. But, like we're supposed to be the perfect mom, perfect wife or partner, and then the perfect career person. And at some point, something's got to give. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
Um, if there's someone out there that can do everything and keep their crap together, please let Lisa and I know because I'm really curious about it. But I can't. I mean, when I was the boys were home and I was working, I felt like I was a monster. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't get everything done. And yeah, I feel like sometimes maybe we just have so much on our plate trying to be this or that, expectations or what we think is expected of us. But we
Yeah, and we
definitely need
don't
to,
dare ask for support
yeah,
because, like, in the society, it seems like support is something, a sign of weakness almost.
I know.
But there was a time when we lived in communities where there would be like a red tent. I don't know if you know about that red tent practice, but like there would be a red tent in the middle
Yes,
or like wherever in the village where the
yes,
women would go when they menstruated, and then
yes,
somebody else would take care of their kids because
yes,
they would do the same in turn for the other person. And so
yes,
like I love this idea of like even women who maybe didn't want to have children, they could
right.
be a part-time mother just by mothering the children while the others were in
Yes.
the tent, and
I
everybody as they
forgot about
wanted.
that. I know you mentioned that in our prep meeting, but I mean, how cool is that where you're feeling like, not your best, so you can go to the tent and, kinda just, let someone else deal with the problems, in your life or your family or whatever the situation is, and you've got other women there who are going through the same thing, being supportive.
Yeah, and what I find even more important is that the girls would go there when they started their first bleed, when they came into womanhood. And so a young woman would already get to know the troubles that can happen in marriage or in
Mhm,
childbirth or being a mother, what it feels like.
mhm.
And so there was much more connection. And I feel like today we are very isolated, and
Yes,
because we are very isolated, our minds start racing and putting even more expectations on ourselves.
yes,
And so we feel like, oh my God, we're the only one. We can't tell anybody because everybody would think we're crazy. And then when you've got a woman's circle and one woman opens up and you have got, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. And you hear that from everyone.
I know, right?
So it's so good when women come together to talk about these things and
Yes.
openly about all these taboo topics that we are not allowed to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely love that. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've talked more about it because I've entered another stage of my life. So, where I'm not so feel like I'm restrictive about talking about some of these things, but how would you, help someone who had to have, like, a hysterectomy where they had a partial where, like, their uterus was removed? Because I know that they're still going through some sort of a cycle, there's
Yeah.
still that time that their body is just, going through the I don't know if it's going through the motions or what. I mean, is that the same thing? Would you just use the same concept with them? If
That depends on whether or not they still have their ovaries, because the ovaries produce the hormones.
okay,
And
yeah.
so I'd always, yeah, well, so if you have an, I always say, if you have a natural menstrual cycle, which means
Mhm,
you don't take hormonal birth control, you are not pregnant, you don't breastfeed, that's a
mhm,
natural cycle.
mhm. Yeah.
In those cases, you track according to your cycle. Like menstruation day 1 would be cycle day 1.
Right.
And then you go until next menstruation. And in
Right.
all other cases, I go along with the moon, like
Yeah.
a woman would in menopause. Dark moon, the moment where the moon is not visible at all in the sky, is day 1.
Oh my god, that's what it feels like. I because I started going through that a few years ago, and I at least it's not the nicest thing to do. But so if they still have their ovaries, then they could still track, um, their
I'm not
cycles.
so sure how you would track your cycle, because I don't know how you would know when menstruation is, because you can't really menstruate. So I would probably still
Oh.
go with the moon cycle.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Um, but like that's always, I mean, women who don't have a uterus,
Mhm.
they can always just refer to the moon cycle,
Right. So
as
it
do women
starts
in
on the dark
menopause.
moon. Yeah.
Exactly. It starts on the dark moon. And then,
Right.
I mean, you would track your energy every day, and then you would still find the phases where you have more energy and the phases where you have less energy. And I always say, take your personal cycle as the baseline.
Yeah.
Your experience. I mean, just because I explained this archetypal cycle where, like, ovulation is this time similar
Uh-huh.
to full moon, where you are like in full bloom and
Yeah.
want to go outside. For some women, that's an extremely challenging time, and they need to retreat back from the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's okay too. So your cycle is always right.
Yeah.
And
I
then
might
there
tell my
are,
husband that. My cycle's always right, like, you know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it can totally help in family life as well, to just
Mhm.
be aware, hey, around day 20 or whatever, this critic will come up, and I
Mhm.
might have some arguments. Or like
Yeah.
a certain kind of belief always comes around this certain
Right.
time of the month, right?
Right.
And we
Right.
we we don't have to forget, like, there are other cycles at play at the same time. There is, of course, like, the day also has a cycle.
Uh-huh.
The moon has her cycle, and the moon is moving through the different zodiac signs all the
Right.
time. And so there are subtle influences too. If you're, for example, a highly sensitive person, you might feel these influences, because every sun sign, every zodiac sign has a certain theme, and then
Uh-huh.
at that time something of that theme shows up in your life. That's very
Oh,
possible.
wow. That
And
is
then
like
you've got,
magic.
it is. And then you've got, like, the bigger cycles of the seasons you're in. I mean, your
Mhm.
menstruation might feel different in winter compared to your menstruation in summer.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
And you
true.
have the cycles of life, right? You have
Mhm.
got the transitions into womanhood with
Mhm.
menarche, with the first bleed. Then you've got the
Mhm.
transition into motherhood. And then you've got the transition into cronehood, like becoming
Mhm.
the wise woman when you stop bleeding.
Mhm.
And so, like, we are always in different cycles at the same time. But I believe these bigger cycles only are a flavor to your personal cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I do agree with that. So, Lisa, so how can people reach out to you? I know I went to your website. I really loved it. And I know that you have a newsletter, right? That they can sign up for.
Exactly, because at the time, I thought, how great would it be to have these reminders of, now we are entering this phase, and
Uh-huh.
this might happen, and you can do this to support yourself. So I
Yeah.
created this myself, and I write a weekly-ish newsletter. I
Yeah.
do it according to the moon rhythm, because obviously I can't send personal
Yeah.
menstrual rhythm emails out all the time. But just to remind us, now we are collectively moving into this phase, and this might come up. And if you like, you can support yourself like this. But I also share, like, personal reflections, insights I've
Uh-huh.
gained in my own
Aw.
life, how I support myself, which might help
Yeah.
somebody else to support themselves.
Right, right. I love that. So you can go to lisayara.com and sign up for your soul mail sign up, you know. And Lisa, before we end our conversation, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share to the women out there who, you know, we all experience this, you know, cycle? And what are your thoughts, your last thoughts?
That it's the best thing that you can do. And I don't often give advice, but it's really becoming a friend to your own body, because your body will be with you until the end. And it
Yeah.
is a supporter, it is an ally. It ultimately, it just tries to support you. And the more you understand about it, the more you can live in tune with it, the more ease
Uh-huh.
you will experience in life.
Wow. That's beautiful. I really like that. So, thank you, Lisa, for joining us. I know that there's a big time difference with, you know, because you're on the other side of the world, but but we did find out that she's had rain and we've had rain. So,
Hmm.
who knew? It must be some sort of a cycle.
Definitely.
Lisa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I hope that we can get together again in the future.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.